because we're ready to start the festivities of this annual banquet. The awards presentation to the 2014 honorees by the Legislative Evaluation Assembly. The first honoree I would like to mention, who served a couple of terms in the legislature, who's not here in the state right now, but sends his thanks and appreciation, is former Representative Ernie Leidiger. So can we get a round of applause for Ernie Leidiger? We also have another former representative that served with distinction, who achieved his highest score ever last year for LEA, scoring 91%, and that would be former Representative Mike Benson. Mike, would you like to come up and say a few words?
You actually give the microphone to the politicians tonight? Well, first of all, of course, thank you for the award. I'm mindful of, in fact, that there are people that, like you, have the same conservative values that I do, that are watching. But I have to say, and I just talked about it at our table, it was a natural for me. When these votes came up and these bills, were presented to the floor to take the vote that I did, it wasn't a matter of making or voting, if you will, for any kind of consideration for any group. It was just a natural thing to do. We need smaller government. But thank you for all that you do. Thank you for of course, the recognition tonight. But congratulations to, in fact, all of the legislators that are here tonight. And as a retired, maybe just a little word of encouragement to keep it up. And if anything, let's pull more of our colleagues into the LEA column of 90 plus. Thank you.
Stay here for your award.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
One more, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Benson. Thank you. The next honoree is also, I believe, it's his first time receiving an award at the banquet. Second time. Oh, sorry, don't want to shortchange you. I know you've been honorable mentioned a number of times, and a stalwart defender of the principles that are in the LEA Credo. And so, welcome to the 2015 banquet, Representative Bob Detmer.
Again, I want to thank you for this award, and I know I'm looking at our caucus and being in the majority now, we have a lot of work to do, and with our good leadership that we have, and I really feel that people put us in office for a reason, and one thing we should never forget, we're here to serve, and being a servant is part of being in the legislature. And I know many times during the voting, I'd always look over to Draz and see where Draz is at, and we would talk about some of the bills and or Quam. We would talk about the different bills and where they're at. But I really appreciate this honor, and thank you very much.
Okay, the next honoree, excuse me, that's better, right? The next honoree, I'm confident to say it's not his first time here. In fact, of all the years that he has been in the legislature, I believe all but one, he has received an award from LEA, which is, we don't make that easy to do. We wanted to make the awards attainable, but not particularly easy to achieve, and he really stands out. I think he has a lifetime career mark of over 90%. Welcome to the 2015 banquet, Representative Steve Yaskowski.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the award and the recognition. Thank you for the great meal, and thank you for being able to share this night with some of my good friends in my caucus as we look at this number. And as I reflect on last year, I think, what did we have, 6 or 7 maybe from the House last year, and I like this bigger group we have this year, a bigger number, and I think that needs to be our goal, as was outlined earlier, to continue to build the strength among people who show up at the Capitol, and they're there for a purpose, and that purpose is to try to extend and build on and recapture freedoms that many times have been lost, not only to past legislatures, but even past generations, if we can recapture some of those. And that really begins, just a moment of thought for folks, as you think to the next election and the one after that, it's in the person you select to run for that seat. Once you select them, you are not going to turn them into somebody they are not. And if you have somebody that's principled, and I look around the room and I look at Representative Pugh and Representative Newberger and Representative Pepin and former Representative Benson and Hackbarth and Hertas and everybody in here, Representative Erickson, I better make sure I didn't miss anybody, Representative Detmer, Representative Quam, these are all folks who, when they were elected, they were here to try to make a difference and to move us into a freer direction. And if you're there for that type of purpose, you're going to be somebody who shows up at these awards. So help us select more good people, get them elected to office, and let's double the size of this thing next time. Thank you.
Second nature to you, right? All right. Thank you.
Smiles right
All right. Thank you. You.
The next honoree is another legislator who has received plenty of awards from our organization, and a longtime supporter of our organization, Representative Sandra Erickson.
Thank you very much, and I have a stack of these awards, and they are the ones that I so proudly display in my office. I don't put up any other awards. So I just want to say that, you know, in the years that I've served and the awards I've received, which have not been every year, I'm sorry for that, but when I read your narrative that introduces the legislation that you graded us on or ranked us on, I don't know who wrote this narrative, but it's so well written, and as a former high school English teacher, I salute you on that. But phrases that stuck out at me, such as constitutional process and political principles were largely swept under the rug. You probably heard me and others arguing against a bullying bill, which is of course one of the bills on which you ranked us. I think everyone in this room who's a legislator voted no on that. But you know, that really is sweeping the Constitution under the rug. One size fits all, and taking on a social issue like bullying. Very distraught was I while that was being debated. And another is the expungement of criminal records. Watch, because this year I have an expungement bill that deals with the teaching profession. Because when this bill was enacted last year, it sounded so good, and yet on the side of teachers, in further study, I realized that there were acts that could be committed out there that would be expunged, and the school boards would never know when this applicant came to seek a job in a school district teaching our children. So there are things that happen in the legislature for which you have to be a super watchdog And I hope that I'm among those that do that. So thank you again. I could say other things about your great narrative, but know that we have just a limited time here. So I will continue to support the Constitution, limited government, free market, as free as we can get it. We need to work harder. And all the great other principles for which you stand. Thank you.
Show it to the cameras here.
Now it's time to welcome back another member of the legislature that's received honors from our organization before, Representative Tom Hackbarth.
Thank you, John, and I won't take up a lot of your time, but this is one of the most prestigious awards that, and I'm very, very honored to get this award. I'm very, very happy. Legislators get a lot of different awards, but this is the one that I really hold near and dear to my heart, and thank you for that. I just want to mention, John, I don't know what legislator may have gotten the most awards from the LEA in the past, or if there's any kind of a record of that at all. Maybe it's Sandra Erickson, I don't know, or maybe it's Representative Drazkowski is working towards that goal.
Bruce Anderson would be close.
Bruce Anderson would be close. But I know that Representative Biskins had to be pretty close to that mark too. And my good friend, Representative Mark Biskins, is now living in Ecuador, and I miss him, and I sure wish he was here. But I just wanted to mention Mark Biskins. He's a great guy and a great friend, and I miss him. I wish he was here with us today. And my constituent, Mary, is here, and thank you, Mary, for all your hard work with LEA. Thank you very much for having us.
We can have our picture together. Okay.
Now we're getting to a section of the honorees that are fairly new to the legislature, but are showing a lot of promise. And we have here for the first time tonight, Representative Jerry Herthaus. Welcome.
Well, thank you, LEA members. It is really an honor to get this award, and I appreciate it very much. You know, in the legislature, if you enter in the House chamber on the right-hand side, if you look far over to the right of the lectern, there's an area that we call the doghouse. And or dog pound, I'm sorry. I get corrected. And what I was kind of observing is many of the members here are in that dog pound. And maybe not necessarily the most popular place to be, but I noticed last year Draz and Cindy are over there, and Quam and whatnot. So we have a lot of members that are over on that side. I kind of have this isolation out sitting in the middle of the House chamber, and I was rather labored sometimes looking at my colleague always voting against me. I felt like I was being neutralized in every vote that I took. But that being said, you know, many of us believe in limited government and believing in market-based solutions to keeping our government smaller. And kind of the litmus test that I always use when I'm thinking about a bill is this good policy? So oftentimes we get bills and legislation that are introduced simply because of a single issue or a single person's problem, and not necessarily the best reason to be changing our laws. And when you think about in the biennium that there's roughly 2,500 ideas that get introduced, and you think about all that massive legislation, what a mess it would be if they all got passed. Thank goodness we have circumstances in which they suffer their fate and get introductions but don't get too much past committee. But at least the legislation that does get passed, some of it's controversial obviously, but you know, it's part of the process, and that's what makes majorities swing back and forth. And I hope that we continue to have a conservative legislature. And I'm just sorry that there aren't 72 members here tonight. Thank you.
another fairly new member of the legislature here for the first time tonight. Come on up and introduce yourself, Representative Jim Newberger.
Thank you everyone for being here tonight. This is my first banquet with LEA, and I didn't know what to expect. Walked in the room and it's like, I know a lot of you members. I know a lot of you people, not just the members here. I know the Salmons, and I know Brad back there, and I know Harold, and I'm looking around the room and I know a lot of you folks, and Bev, and it's a breath of fresh air, is what it is. If you ask any one of us that work over in the state office building, all day long we're barraged by people from groups who just want more government, and they want more money, and they want more government, and they want more money. And they don't care where you get it, just do it. And to come here, it's a breath of fresh air. It really is. To sit down with like-minded people who really care about the issues, thank you very much. Not much I can say that hasn't been said. I do agree with Representative Hertas. We need to get more members here. Your message is good. Your message is sound. This whole concept of big government, central control, I can tell you right now, briefly, I know exactly what that looks like. I was kidding earlier tonight in caucus. I was speaking a little bit Russian, but I've been to the former Soviet Union 8 times. I've been to Russia a couple times, Ukraine 5 times, been to Romania once. Well, I shouldn't say Ukraine anymore because the parts of Ukraine I was in are now Russia. I've got lots of good friends there, and I've had a lot of really good political conversations with people that live in that part of the world. And I can tell you right now, what we have here in the U.S., there's never been anything like it. There's never been anything like it. So thank you for being stalwarts for our freedoms. Thank you. God bless you. Hate photos. Put your lens on, Skinny.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Next member.
The next member of the legislature to honor this evening, I remember a couple of years ago she was here. She scored 100% on one of our reports. And 1 year, oh, that's not even new. This year she just had to settle for 91. Let's hear from the House Majority Leader, Representative Joyce Pappan.
I have to tell you, when I did get the 100%, I was so honored. It is always such an honor to be here. I will point out, I do have several awards from LEA, and I will point out that there a few years I missed them, but mostly it was because I missed a few votes because I was in law school while I was also in the legislature. So I did miss a few votes, thus missing a few LEA awards, so I hope you'll give me some slack there. I just wanted to tell you that this is, as some of the other members mentioned, this is one of the awards that are very much coveted in the legislature. And you have a credo that you print every year on your report. And the credo that, and I have this line highlighted and I have it in my, I always keep one in my desk. It says, LEA bases its evaluation on the traditional American principles of constitutionalism, limited government, free enterprise, legal and moral order with justice and individual liberty and dignity. And I tell you that because I want you to know that many of us look to this, look to your credo, and we appreciate the work you're doing. And when we think about votes and how we're going to vote, we think about these things a lot. And I've, over the years, I've sat next to Representative Newberger, I've sat next to Representative Hackbarth, very within a seat or two, and so we do talk about LEA, and we talk about, I'll sometimes say to Representative Newberger, oh, Representative Newberger, you remember, this is going to be an LEA vote.
Many times.
And at first, I don't know that you knew exactly what that meant, but I know you know what it means now.
Yeah.
So I agree also with what Representative Hertas said about wanting to have a lot more members. There's only one problem that I can see. And that problem has to do with the overview that you wrote, legislation in a one-party state. We no longer have that. So Republicans now control the House of Representatives. So my goal, my goal as the new majority leader of the Minnesota House of Representatives is to make it very, very, very difficult for you to find 20 votes for which to score us next year. So that's my challenge, and I'll work with some of my colleagues to make it much more difficult to find good votes. So thank you. Thank you very much.
ago, I spoke to a group that this next representative was leading at the time. And it was a Monday night, and there were probably 70, 80 people there, and I was introducing them to LEA. It was a Tea Party group. Now she is in the legislature and doing her part to advance the principles of the LEA Credo. Representative Cindy Pugh.
Thank you, John, and to LEA, and I'm just so honored to be here. As somebody who came up from the grassroots, never having even considered running for office before, I completely embrace, in fact, it's the fiber, the fiber from which I've been cut, to really focus on and just believe in constitutionally limited government and fiscal responsibility and just free markets. And the last 2 years, it was, as one of my colleagues said on the floor the other day, it was government gone wild. It was a really painful experience, to witness what we did. And so many of the votes that I cast, I mean, they were just like really easy votes to cast. I mean, there was really no question about how I was going to vote. And I look forward to having my decisions be that crystal clear and clear cut this year in the leadership as well. And I share everyone's vision to have this room just be full of all of our colleagues. And there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be able to double the size. I'm so excited, and I'm sure all my colleagues would echo this. We have so many rock solid conservative new members, and it is an honor and a privilege to serve with them. So, and I was a member of the Dog Pound last year. In fact, I'm not this year, but sitting right next to Tom, and he's going to keep me in line, and Jim is just two seats away from me. But I had the just privilege of sitting right behind Representative Steve Drazkowski. And so I learned so much from him, and I remember how many times I would consult with him if I had a question about something. It was awesome, but I loved sitting behind him because every time he rose and stood on the floor and spoke, which he always did such a great job, I could just smile and nod. I could sit there and smile and nod right behind him, and I heard from so many of my constituents who said they saw me on the floor, and so I had the halo effect sitting where I sat right behind him. So anyway, I just want to thank you again, and I look forward to having a really solid voting record. So going forward, thank you.
Okay, and finally tonight, I'd like to welcome back to the LEA honorees for 2015, Representative Dwayne Quam.
Thank you. And the difference between this and the other awards is the fact that all the other ones are groups saying, what are you doing for us? What are you helping us with? And frankly, you're here, just like the founders were for this country, worried about the principles, the ideals, the vision that created this country. And you keep that light on. And I tell you, I grew up in Minnesota. I knew there were dark times where there were very few lights, but you've been a consistent light shining about why this nation is such a great nation. And again, the Constitution gave us something that we owe back to this generation and the generations to come. And that's why this award is so much more and greater than the others, is because it's about principles, ideals, and a vision that started from our forefathers. And thank you so much for this award.
Saved me so the camera would be here. Not gonna see it, might break.
Hey, this is